I want to talk about Noam Chomsky said something that was amazing. So they were asking him about the Ukraine war. Now, I don't want to go into re-explaining how we got to the Ukraine war. Just so you know, with the reason why we're having a Ukraine war is because the United States overthrew the government in Ukraine in 2014, and then that government that we installed, a lot of the people in the eastern part of Ukraine didn't want to live with that government because it was a coup government, and they were more Russian separatists, and so they had a peace agreement, and the government of Ukraine was supposed to leave those people alone in the eastern Ukraine. They didn't. Not only did they not leave them alone, they bombed them for 8 years straight, killing at least 14,000 of them. And so then Putin invaded to try to stop that, among other things. And we've been threatening to put Ukraine in NATO. Plus, there's a gas pipeline called Nord Stream 2. So there's lots of things. It's none of the stuff you hear on the news is why what Ukraine war is happening. So that's what I want you to understand. We provoked this, meaning the NATO and Joe Biden and the United States provoked this confrontation, and we're using the people of Ukraine as cannon fodder. And we all know how this is going to end. It's going to end with a peace negotiation where Putin gets what he wants, meaning a neutral Ukraine. And we all know that's how it's going to end up. So that's what I want you to know. But now, but the weird thing is to see everybody be easily propagandized into wanting to have a war with Russia, which is a nuclear power, which means the end of civilization. So listen to what Chomsky says about this. Who's the one guy who's actually seeking a peace deal? Let's listen to Chomsky.
Well, there is fortunately one statesman in the United States and Europe who has laid out, a person of a high political figure who has made a very sensible statement about how you can solve the crisis, namely by facilitating negotiations instead of undermining them, and moving towards establishing some kind of accommodation in Europe.
So what he's saying is because we've been undermining, meaning the United States and NATO have been undermining the peace negotiations. So that's what he's saying. Where instead of doing that,
maybe in which there are no military alliances, but just mutual accommodation. He didn't say it, but it's something like what George H.W. Bush, the first Bush, not the second, proposed in the early 90s after the collapse of the Soviet Union, proposed what they called a partnership for peace, which would be open for Europeans generally, Eurasians as well. It wouldn't eliminate NATO, but he would live up to the promise that NATO would not expand to the east, firm promise to Gorbachev. Keep to that, allow NATO there, but kind of de-emphasize it so other countries could join, including Russia for that matter, join the Partnership for Peace. Tajikistan joined, for example, not NATO, and move towards a world, a Europe, Eurasia with no military alliances. Actually, de Gaulle had similar vision. Emmanuel Macron, in his initiatives trying to contact Putin, suggested something similar. So going back to the one Western statesman, he didn't mention all of this, but he suggested something similar. Move towards negotiations and diplomacy instead of escalating the war. Try to see if he can bring about an accommodation, which would be roughly along these lines. His name is Donald J. Trump.
And now you know the rest of the story. Now he's saying, oh, Donald Trump is the only guy who's actually talking about peace. He's the only guy who wants diplomacy in Ukraine. He's the only guy who's trying to avoid World War III. It's Donald Trump. Chomsky's not a liar, so he has to tell the truth. And the truth is, he watches what's happening, and Trump is the only guy that is pushing for a peace and diplomacy in Ukraine. And also, by the way, what other guy on TV besides Tucker Carlson is doing that? Is anybody at MSNBC telling you the truth about Ukraine? Is anybody at CNN telling you the truth about Ukraine? Is anybody else at Fox telling you that? No, it's one guy, and you should all be embarrassed because you say that guy's the worst guy in the world, yet he's outdoing you. You're going to let Tucker Carlson do a better job of reporting on Ukraine than Chris Hayes? Yes, the answer is yes. Tucker Carlson doing a much better job. Trump also proposing peace. It's kind of crazy, isn't it? So what a shocker. I wonder what people are going to say. I'm going to guess that most people are going to ignore this, that Chomsky said this. And just like they're ignoring the fact that we should have a peaceful settlement and use diplomacy in Ukraine instead of sanctions and military, $33 billion in military aid. We should be trying to not do that. We should not drag this war out. This is only going to slaughter more people in Ukraine. The more military aid we give them, the worse it is for them. Go ahead, Kurt.
I care about the people of Ukraine so much that I would rather they were dead than Putin be happy.
So this taps into that Trump derangement syndrome. So somehow we can punch Putin in the nose, and it's just like punching Trump in the nose. And that's how the propaganda is working this time.